One, two, three, and we're live. Hello, hello.
Hey, everybody.
How are you doing, Leon?
How am I doing?
Yes,
I'm chilling, dude. How you doing?
pretty nice. I'm doing good. How is it?
How is SF? I'm still figuring that out. It's cold in
Mhm.
late August, which is weird. If anybody here is from the West Coast, I'm out here through mid-September. I'm actually going to be here right up until the AI conference, if anybody's going to that. But I'm out here going to a bunch of tech events, just like meetups, hackathons, having a great time. So if anybody's out here on the West Coast in the Bay Area, definitely hit me up in the Slack, in the Zencoder Slack community, on LinkedIn, whatever. I'd love to see you at one of these events. So definitely hit us up.
Awesome. Perfect. I think we should give like a minute more for people to join in, and then you can do your magic.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think today's topic around refactoring for enterprise is something that a lot of people are asking for. And yeah, I would love to pick your thoughts before we jump and deep dive into it, the refactoring stuff. What are the things do you keep in mind while you refactor a piece of code? What are the best practices that you essentially
You ask what are some of the best practices? Well,
Yes.
where to start, right? And good morning to MD Katka. So refactoring takes a lot of shapes and forms, right? I mean, you could be refactoring from like a low security to a higher security framework. You could be refactoring from Java 2 point whatever to a version that's not insanely old, right? So there's refactoring legacy code, there's refactoring low security code, refactoring from one framework to another. Let's say you just want to move from, let's say, Angular to React for honestly a host of reasons, right? And actually, I can get into some of those reasons. I'm not here to sell you on React or anything, but if that's the way the conversation goes, then there's something to be said about it. But even like higher level object-oriented programming over to like a functional framework, right? And that's actually really interesting today in LLMs because the way that you structure your code, it's like the way that an LLM is most helpful to you is when it understands the most context, right? And to get that context, you don't want to overstuff the goose, right?
Right.
So now this is general, and by no means is it like I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but in general, because of the nature of object-oriented programming, you generally end up with larger file sizes, right? When you're defining the behavior of a class, right? Of your data model, for example, or just whatever class you're building, versus functional programming, which is, I would say, it separates responsibilities a lot more. Now, again, I love Ruby, for example. That's object oriented, right?
Right.
A lot of Swift is object oriented, but at the end of the day, when you're stuffing all that into like into a large file, then once you get past like a couple thousand lines, you start to get context truncation, depending on the LLM you're working with. I mean, if you have, okay, you know what? I'm getting off topic. We can come back to that, but that's just one of the many. That's just one of the many reasons why you might want to refactor, right? Refactor for working with LLMs. But honestly, that's pretty low on the list of reasons you might want to refactor. For me, I usually refactor code to use newer frameworks and newer libraries on projects that might be more than like a few years old. Basically to participate in the developer community and people that are building awesome new libraries. So if anybody wants to let the chat with some of the larger, or really any project that you might be looking at to refactor or to take another swing at, or some legacy code that needs updating. I do have an example that I'm going to share in a minute.
Sure.
I wouldn't necessarily say legacy Java application, but it's on the older side. It's just a classic Java web app, right? So it's got a lot of patterns that were pretty common in like the early mid 2000s. Now it's a little out of debt. It's a little out of so what I'm looking for. a little out of touch, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. I think we should get started now. And yep.
Yeah. Sean is basically telling me to shut up and show you the money. So I'm just
No, I mean, not really. I mean, I think we should get started. People are waiting for you to, walk them through on how to refactor an enterprise piece of code. So,
yeah, definitely. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully you guys are looking at the right thing. 1 second. One second. Yeah. Okay. So can you see my VS Code?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay. Awesome.
So
Perfect.
this is actually my JPET store. And I know that probably most of you have some more sophisticated applications than this, but just for the sake of clarity and time, this is like a fairly small to mid-size application, right? And this is what it looks like. If I share now my this is it, right? It's really nothing too fancy. You can see just by the look how old it actually is, right? Now, it is pretty sick. It does work, right? But pretty old. And with that age comes a lot of concerns. So now if I go back to my Visual Studio, which should be right over here. Okay, everybody can see my Visual Studio again. So first, we can just start with the repo info, right? And number one thing that should be top of mind, especially if anybody's been following the news, is security vulnerabilities. So I already have a prompt here that I have ready to go, right, which is identifying security vulnerabilities in the auth system here. So we're going to go ahead and let that run. And in the meantime, so this, like I said, is an early Java project. Now we can do stuff from refactor this in the context of the current infrastructure. So we can essentially refactor security within this Java framework. Or what we can do is go bigger, right? Modernize this whole Java framework, even transition this from something like Java Spring Boot to React components, right? Zencoder can handle that scope of work, right? So if we just open this up in a master directory and we said just refactor the UI to React, then we can have a functional React website for the most part within one prompt. It's been done. We've done it before and we can do it again. But what I really want to show you is that you can make your application, regardless of its age, already more robust, working in a framework or paradigm that you, A, probably don't know or may not know because of the age of that paradigm, and B, probably don't need to know because you already have enough new and current technology to learn, right? So there's no point in reinventing the wheel. It's kind of like learning Latin, right? If you want to go and deep dive into the old way of doing it, be my guest. But that shouldn't stop you from implementing critical updates like security overhaul from the get-go. And so here we've got this really nice, excuse me, really nice just like visual flow. I'm a visual learner, so this helps a lot. Visual flow of how this works. And then we've got this conclusion, right? So transition to bcrypt, right? Implementation steps. So now we can actually, let's do exactly that actually. Hang on. I'm just going to take this and then I'm just going to start a new chat with the coding agent. Let's go with, you know what? Let's go with parallel thinking. Yeah. Kick this off. And as you might expect, now we're just going from this like really simple auth scheme, storing password as plain text, right, to something a lot more robust. Like storing passwords as plain text, obviously bad practice, but in this application, because of its age and because of its lack of maturity, that's what we ran into. Please do, right? And so this is true across Honestly, probably most early stage to mid stage companies and older companies for repos that people don't want to touch because they are old and either the language is unfamiliar or they're just afraid of breaking things. Quick question, and you can just answer in the chat. Whoever is familiar with our multi-repo tech, I would love to know how many of you are familiar with that side of things, because multi-repo search comes in huge handy. Very much comes in handy when taking over like a big refactoring project, because as much as you don't want to break stuff in the context of the project you're working in, if you have a legacy repo, then odds are it's by this point, like it's legacy because it's old. And if you're still working on it and it's legacy, that means that it's been around long enough to survive the expansion of your business, which means that other repos in your org, it's probably part of like a larger ecosystem of interdependent services. What do I want to tackle first here? Okay, so we've got everything from schema updates, bcrypt dependency. Let's modify the authentication logic, right? Let's go with modifying the auth logic. And now we'll just let it work. If anybody has any questions so far, I've got this screen open so I can't see the chat. But if anybody's got any questions while this is running, be my guest.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we have any questions so far. So far, so good.
Okay, nice. Also, I just want to highlight that even from the get-go, like even before we started modifying anything, we're already like you can run the repo info agent to identify those vulnerabilities and that legacy code, right? So even before you're ready to start work, like it identifies the most critical areas that are in need of refactoring, and then you can go from there. So you don't need a master's in cybersecurity or several years of UX design to at least find out what are your most critical pain points. And you can see here that these generating changes, these are all happening in parallel, right? So you're getting a lot of work done at different parts together at the same time. All right, nice. By the way, I just want to show you guys here that there's a lot of value in sort of the thinking models when they make a change or start making change. And then here you can kind of see how as it's going, it's actually planning. And you'll sometimes see that like it'll start with an implementation and then actually rethink the implementation and go, actually, it would be smart to do it differently. So there's a lot of value that you get out of higher quality models. And that said, you can also get an enormous amount of quality out of really good prompting and managing your context well, even on smaller models. But that's a conversation for another time. So create database. Okay, so create test. Okay, and it's creating the test for me. Now, actually, what I would have done is after this, go to my unit test agent here and just write some unit tests for the new flow. And depending on when this wraps up, then we can go and do that. I do want to show you one more thing, but I know we're coming up on the halfway point, and I still really want to show you multi-repo in this context. So I'm going to let this run, generate my files. This might actually be quite a few files here. In the meantime, I can show you actually the analysis that I ran earlier, right? So I asked it for detailed prompts of where I can most benefit from a refactoring. Because frankly, I wasn't sure where to start. There's so much in this project that's legacy that it not only identifies all of these points, right? But then the instructions to itself on how to fix it. And so now we can go one by one here. And this is something I like to do a lot when I'm taking like critical work, then I like to have manual apply on, right? Because I really want to know the infrastructure of what I'm doing so that I can guide further work. Here, nice. Okay, we've got some validations here. Beauty. I'm just going to go with apply all. And there we have it, right? Now from here I can, obviously commit, or from here I can actually jump into like a unit testing agent, which I really like. It's really interactive. And honestly, even, let's see, do I have I have my security auditor downloaded. So that's a custom agent that we have in our org, and it's available in our agent catalog too. We have specialized agents for a lot of different use cases. In fact, if I go into my agents panel here, so I mean, you'll see here that Zencoder has like 50, like just our team. We're using 57 different custom agents now. I built this one and I shared it with the org because it was just working out really well for myself. I might actually run the accessibility expert on this to make sure that any changes in the UI didn't break accessibility standards. Because this agent, the instructions plus the tools are configured for accessibility checking. But then if I go to my agents and I go to the library, let's see, we have a legacy code modernizer that you can specifically run on this to get even more detailed output of just old infrastructure. Okay, so I showed you this example in Java. What I really want to show you now is I'm going to log. So this is a different account. I want to log into my personal account to show you something pretty cool. I want to show you how valuable multi-repo can be when, excuse me there. Yeah, and I want to open, let's say, hang on a second. Where are you? Where's StreamYard? There it is. I'm going to open up a different project and use multi-repo on it, and multi-repo search, and you're going to see how those interdependencies come into play.
Got it. I think we have a bunch of questions. Do you want to answer them now, or?
Yeah, hit me as I'm opening it up.
Okay, I'm just bringing them up. Dina has a question for you.
Yeah, hit me.
So Dina asked, which AI model are you using right now?
I was just using Sonnet 4.0 parallel thinking. But if, okay, yeah, I'm ready to share again, so I'll just show you what I'm talking about.
So there's another question from Preston. What level of account are you using? Can you do the same thing that you're doing with a $19 plan?
Yes, absolutely. What I'm about to show you, multi-repo search, is only available on core and advanced plans. And because that takes up some more resources on our side for indexing all of the repos across your organization. But it is well worth it if you do work in a multi-repo environment. I came from a company where we had 300 repos, right? And I'm going to show you the value of that right now, actually. So if I go to Stream Studio, let's open up my, let's just share my whole screen. There we go. Okay, so now you're probably, yep, you're in that zone. So this is my Zencoder like dashboard, right? And you can see that my team here has just like, I guess, a little over half a dozen repos indexed, right? And right here you can see I've got these. So these three are actually part of one cohesive platform. And I've got the backend Rusty TypeScript or Rusty TS open right here. I hope everybody can see this. And I want to show you how, okay, so this is an application that is essentially like it's an AI-enabled vocational training platform. And I want to see let's say which model architecture might be outdated and how might changes in this repo affect other repos in my org, right? I will use the coding agent, and as to the earlier question, I can select from a host of models here, right? I will again use Sonnet 4 parallel thinking. Oh yeah, it wants access to my linear. It doesn't need linear for this, but we'll go ahead and prove it. I think it wants access, but honestly, it's like this particular example doesn't even need linear. So we'll just ignore it. So this get organization repos call comes with the core, and this get organization repos and multi-repo search tools comes with the core and advanced plans. And this is essentially Zencoder reading through its indexes of all of these repos, right? Now to create these repos, you just go into connections and you add your connections here through your GitHub personal access tokens. That said, this works with GitHub and GitLab and Bitbucket. So wherever your remote repo is, you can bring your repos into the index. And this is a lot more powerful than just connecting your GitHub as an MCP, because since this is all indexed, it takes a lot less work to find the relevant code based on the query. Excuse me. And so here, because of that multi-repo search now, and this is honestly my favorite thing in the world, I can see how these repos interact and how changes or refactors in one repo are going to affect the other repos, right? So even though Rusty Dashboard is Next.js, that's a pretty modern framework, Rusty RN, pretty modern framework. If this was an older framework and I start making changes to it, right, then I might break how these connect, right, or how these rely on each other. And so that high level eagle's eye awareness is so important when you're refactoring old code, especially stuff that nobody's wanted to touch because they're afraid of exactly this situation where you're going to break an interdependency. And those interdependencies are very hard to log because they don't exist in README files, because README files are siloed per project. So this is that connective tissue between your whole organization. And then we've also have, an assessment of these external services. Now, OpenAI and Assembly AI, they're both still fairly modern, right? But this is probably relying on models that are now a few years old, right? So now I can keep drilling into okay, assess, the models that these are using and whether there's a newer model, or even a cheaper model out. You can use our web search or a Brave Search MCP to see if there are any more modern models or services that are a better fit revisiting this project several years on, right? I will stop there for questions, but I just wanted to highlight that refactoring happens both within the project and within the context of all your projects. And you need a really good awareness of both to not break things, and B, build things in a way that makes sense within the context of your tech stack of the whole ecosystem, right? So here, I don't just see what projects this connects to, but also the frameworks of those projects. And so you get a really good sense of the right flavor for your changes so that you don't have to do all this all over again in another couple of years. This is how you build things that are future-proof, by understanding the entire climate in which you're making these changes. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing, and I am going to find you, Shantanu. There you are. Okay. What do y'all think?
Yes, I don't think we have any more questions from the folks. I think Glenn is here. So Glenn says, started to listen, but
Okay, Glenn's going to be back later. It is good to see you, Glenn. Sounds good. So yeah, honestly, as your organization gets bigger and more successful, it is difficult to avoid the trap of sort of switching of your day, filling up more with addressing technical debt than with actually building new features. And this is one of those really key ways where you don't have to sacrifice one for the other, right? The reason that refactoring at scale with AI is particularly, it's a particularly good area to delegate to AI instead of collaborating. Like on new features, having Zencoder right there in the IDE with you, and then the back and forth flavor of the Zencoder agent it's really nice. It's really collaborative. There's a lot of interactive elements in the UI. But then for refactoring stuff, your legacy code base is essentially a scaffold. It's as rich like a requirements doc as you can sort of hope for, right? Because all the functionality is there. It's just that it needs to be modernized. And so refactoring provides like a really, really rich context for the Zencoder agent for AI as a whole. And if you're interested in getting started, refactoring either something you haven't visited in a while or a really large project and you don't know where to start, we have a bunch of agents that will help you get started. And we also have us. Again, you know where to find me. Slack community, LinkedIn. Yeah. I see a couple. Sorry?
Discord. I'm saying Discord as well.
Discord. Oh, got to give a shout out Discord. This guy's all over Discord. Okay. Can we index multiple local repos? There's no limit on number of repos that you can index. I've personally indexed over 100 at one point. So go for it. Shauna, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not aware of any limit on number of repos that you can index. That's really useful, right? Because the more repos you have, the larger your organization.
Yep.
The more in the dark you're going to be about, because it's also a great way of just seeing what people are working on, like the status of your overall organization. It's a great way to understand your organization as a whole and to play a crucial part in it, right? The more you understand, the more confident you are, the more you can participate. But yeah, you can index several repos. We are also and Zencoder, yeah, nice. So yeah, that's the rub. Sorry, I just want to make sure we didn't miss any questions here in the chat. Nope, we're good.
Not really.
Yeah.
Not really. I think we covered most of them. Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Any final note, Leon, from your side, or should we call it off a day?
I just want to say that whether or not you have a project that's in critical need of refactoring, I think you'll surprise yourselves by running Zencoder's legacy refactoring agent or technical debt identifier agents. All these agents are available in the Zencoder marketplace, but I think you will surprise yourselves by how many areas, it will identify that are worth improving, and at the same time, how quickly you can improve those areas and jump back into a project you haven't touched in years or that somebody else hasn't touched in years. How many chats could you run simultaneously while working on multiple repos? So I guess the second part of that question is just where I'm a little confused, right? So to work on multiple repos, so to actually modify files in a particular repo, you'll want to have that repo open, right? The multi-repo search tool is read-only, and that's pretty intentional, right? Because it's really there for the context awareness. And then if you want to modify stuff in one of those other repos that you don't have open, then you can exercise greater control, right? And then add commit from there. But so if that's what you meant, then you'll just open it up from there. But you can have multiple chats running in parallel within a Zencoder window. That's possible. And then can we index repos that are privately held on my servers and not checked into GitHub? It does need to be checked into GitHub, GitLab, or Bitbucket, because that is how we fetch the repos through your personal access tokens or their equivalents in GitLab and Bitbucket. But if I would recommend, you can always run a private GitLab server. Go from there. Okay, I think that just about sums it up.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much, Leon. I think this was wonderful. Thank you so much for giving your time. And once again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining in today. We'll see you again in the next one.
See you. Yep. And thanks, Shantanu. And guys, I'll see you all in the community, or just hit me up. Again, I'm in the Bay Area for another couple of weeks. So if anybody's around, love to grab a coffee, talk about this stuff, we're here for you.
Awesome. Once again, thank you so much. If you still have any questions, feel free to join us on Discord, Reddit, or shoot us an email at support@zencoder.ai, and we'll be more than happy to assist. Till then, take care. Have a good day, good evening from wherever you are. See you again next week. Cheers.